So we have started the Africa block, more or less, of our World Cinema Fund Day with a video message with a declaration sent us by Andreas Görgen, who is the General Director of Culture of the German Foreign Office. And so I think it makes sense also because the German Federal Foreign Office support a very important program of the World Cinema Fund, which is World Cinema Fund Africa, and has been supporting the World Cinema Fund from the beginning of our adventure. Before starting with a panel, which focus more on decolonization strategy, I would like to invite on stage Lemohang Jeremiah Mosese, a director from Lesotho. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for joining us. And I think, well, let's start to talk about decolonization. Jeremiah, you live in Berlin. You have been very successful, I must say, particularly during the last years with 2 long feature films. And, well, I would like to ask to you some ideas or considerations also after showing this film in many international festivals. I'm talking about Mother, I'm Suffocating. This is my last film about you. And this isn't a burial, it's a resurrection. So which is the relation of these films with colonization and maybe with decolonization?
Thank you for having me. You're very kind. I think somehow all of them, they actually deal with specifically decentering the colonial language or Western language, whether it comes to aesthetics or whether it comes to a space. That's why in most cases I shoot in these particular places that have sort of relations to the land, have relations to their history, because it's very important for this discourse that we're talking about, that is specifically, the information is produced for and by the same people who are actually affected, and also who have this rich history of before colonialism. And so in a way, if you look at this is not a burial, it's a resurrection, it deals a lot with this ambiguity of spirituality, and also it deals with death metaphorically, and it has something to do with also identity, and the identity that has been stripped off from people for centuries, pretty much from 1800s with the colonialism. And also it's about sort of a restoration of the becoming that is happening, or maybe forging of a new identity. And also if you look at Mother, I'm Suffocating, this my last film about you, it also, I'm aware of the white cube I'm creating from. I'm aware that the first audience to see my film, it's Western audience, and I'm aware, and I'm negotiating between spaces, but at the same time I'm critiquing, for instance, religion in my country and religion in many African countries, that they become a sort of a part of colonial language, that it's by default, it's almost like it's inherited, we don't even question it. So yeah, I'm dealing with it in both of the films, even with my short film. There was a short film, it's called Behemoth, or The Game of God. It was about a man who goes into the marketplace and tell people that their God is in a coffin. And in the coffin, of course, is money. And the same reaction that people, when this guy was drinking the coffin, tells the people that their God is dead, that their God is in this coffin, people were very angry at this man. It was actually happening in the street, and people didn't know it's a film, but they were very angry because it was sort of a performance art piece, but hybrid with sort of film and crossing lines of film. And also the reaction that I captured was when they found out was money. And also I was looking at how capitalism and also the spirituality and how we react to it, how the normal people in Lesotho react to this, sort of mirroring what is actually happening with people in my country, and also what was happening in myself as well.
I think colonialism, post-colonialism, decolonization is everything about contradiction and ambiguity, because I read, and you started to talk about it, that in Lesotho, everywhere you can find the Bible. And the Bible, I mean, the main instrument, main tool of the religion of the white man. So how to deal with this, I think it's very complicated, particularly, I mean, probably for sincerely religious persons who believe in Christianity. But it's a very complex situation.
Yeah, it is very complex. I mean, it almost feels like a rabbit hole because it goes deeper. When I was coming here, I had this picture of this people, mostly were farmers, and they were looking down, searching for something. The closer I get to these people, the more I hear they're stepping on the clay pieces, like pieces of clay. And they're all bending down and trying to fit them on their faces. They're trying to fit this clay on their faces, see which pieces is fitting. The more you get closer also, I start to see there's sort of a blood coming, or frustration, because they're stepping on this clay pieces. Almost they're trying to reconstruct their faces. And when they stood up, I see their faces being with the hollow. Everything is hollow on their faces. And in my head, I thought, well, I like this picture. Maybe I should just make them find the right pieces for this. But I realized that this is not reality. It's not real. It's so when I was thinking about this, I started to think of how much to forge or to restore image or self-image, it takes a lifetime. And it also, it's if you look at now with where we are now, trying to create a new narrative and trying to go back to our own sources, and to decenter the colonial language and create our own language, it will take us a lifetime. I think we will get to the place where we, maybe not in our generation, that will fully divorce the language, but we are getting there, I think. And also, because even the idea of finding or maybe even forging the language, it's scrutinizing process. It's not an easy process. It takes a lot of unlearning and a lot of finding who you truly are to get to that place of your identity, to get into the place where you are whole. And I just finished a video installation of for Humbert Forum here in Berlin, the Palace of the People. It's about the child who, these children, they wear like a crystals on their faces. It's almost like a war paint. But these crystals, for me, it almost represented whoever is seen. If you are seen among the crystal stones, it feels sparkly. It represents the universe. It's almost like when you see the other person, you see he's a part of God. It's very hard to use the word God because it's very complicated, because I don't necessarily mean the Christian God, but I'm talking about like the divine, or the part of the universe, becoming the part of the universe. And in Christian terms, they use the word called the imago Dei, which is the image of God. And I feel like that's where for us it starts. It starts with our perception towards looking at each other. Who do we see when we're looking at each other? Because with colonialism came it came with a self-loathing, because you are reduced to nothing. When you're reduced to nothing, you can hold on to anything that moves. If you rob a person his dignity, or their dignity, or her dignity, her image, and then you give them God, they will cling to that God. It's a lifelong process, and the process of unlearning is a very violent one. It's almost like what Frank Fanon speaks of, that the decolonization, it can only happen. It's a violent process. It can only be violent to unlearn things.
Why do you feel so attracted by the iconography of the Christianism, of
Um,
the Christianity?
um, I think since I was a child, I remember when I was a child, I asked my mother, "What's going to happen to us when we die?" And then, of course, my mother's Christian, and she said that we will become angels. And I've always had this image of angels, and also even from the early age, I think I've always been obsessed with the idea of hell. I think it was threatening to me, so that I was so obsessed with it, and also heaven. Um, and then later on, I converted. I mean, at that time, I grew up in a place that was very violent. And I remember when my friend shot himself, um, we were the kids who were like the bad kids. And many people will tell me that, even my teachers will tell me that I'm going to end up dead or in prison. This kind of things, and they start to make you feel like you are actually lost person, you are a lost soul. And I think after when my friend shot himself, after that, um, I started to gravitate towards the church. There was a church next to next to our home, and then I would frequent there, and of course they will come and preach to us. So I became a Christian for like maybe 12 years of my life. And after that, the first film that came after that was that I attempted to do a film with friends who were just gathering with friends. It's called For Those Whose God is Dead. And that was for me trying to revolt now, trying to now search for my own identity and my own spirituality.
I think that decolonizing cinema is also about this learning, if this is the right word, a colonized language. So I think between the European or Western artistic tradition and the African tradition, I don't like to talk generally about Africa because there are so many Africans and countries, but definitely there is another approach to narration, to storytelling, maybe time. So which is the biggest difference if we talk about in terms of aesthetical approach and particularly storytelling? I think time for me is an important element.
Yeah, it's you know, I like what I think it's I don't know if it's Gabriel or Osman. He said that we should inspire to create a cinema that you can see with your ears and hear with your eyes, to transcend the language of cinema, where because that's our upbringing, the where everything is so mixed, that the dead are mixed with the living, everything happening within one space, and to be able to communicate in that level. And I feel like for me, that's what I see the difference, in a sense of that, of course, you can bring there's another part which is like folklorish part of our aesthetic, that is a part of our aesthetic, or magic, because we grew up with the stories, and I think that's what comes out naturally with these films. It has something to do with magic in a way. I don't know, maybe I don't have a better word to, maybe the realism in that sense. And I feel like it's ingrained in African cinemas or African cinema. This is a very common thing that is ingrained in it. And also I think it also has something to do with the with the people itself. It's almost like it's a poetry that it cannot be captured, it cannot be written. Especially when you go to the places where you're filming, it's almost like you don't have to let them direct. I don't know, maybe because I've been living here for a long time, I'm starting to romanticize this. But it's almost like you don't, and I don't necessarily have to direct anything. All I could do is just to lift the canvas up, and everybody will see the story unfolding just by looking at them. And I think it has to do with the history of our people. So yeah, I think it's this. It's very personal, I guess. It's very personal. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Our conversation is a kind of introduction to an important part of our event today. And it's about introducing a group of independent initiatives in Africa, which are related to cinema as a space, which is, for us, I think, very important. So do you think that in terms of, if we talk about decolonizing strategies, how important is to create further independent initiatives in Africa and the different countries in order to decolonize also the market? Because, for example, in many African countries, buying a ticket for cinema is extremely expensive, and pretty often they show only American films.
Yeah. I mean, which is a tragedy. Which is a tragedy. I guess is everywhere. It's almost like this. There's the main capitalistic, industrial-driven cinema is the only one that is sort of accessible. But I'm really an advocate of small, like grassroots communities creating something like this, where they can actually have people to access the films. And also, what's important, I think, is when I create my work, I have my people in mind. That's the premise why I create my work. And I'm always even, the people that I always even scared when they see my work, it's people from Lesotho, because they know what I'm talking about, and they can see past it. They can see past the cliches. They can see past the aesthetic. They can go deeper. And I feel like because of this, of like even the setup of the festival, which I'm very grateful of, to be able to exhibit our work and distribute our work through the festivals, but always also have the quest to find a new way of that the immediate people who could see the work that films are for and by, because they're the part of this canon, of this mechanism, or this ecosystem that we are creating as this new wave of filmmakers, and try to create the work that is inventory, and that can produce sort of information or knowledge as a canon within spaces of people who come from the dispossessed areas. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Listening to your words, I'm sure you will be very interested in listening and watching the next panel, because it's about this. Thank you very much, Jeremy. And we can start with the next panel, which has been recorded three days ago. Let's go.